and welcome to another edition of the True Patriot Outfitters podcast. Folks, this episode being brought to you today by, once again, Amped Outdoors. We trust them for our livelihood. Lithium batteries that don't break the bank, that are built with top quality in line with a company that stands behind you. Yep, and yep. You don't have to do the exploration, and I already have. Trust me, I checked out all the brands I could. Amped Outdoors. Go check them out. You will not be sorry. Now that we've paid the bills, let's move on to the next stuff here. Today, we are going to have an opportunity to speak with one of the premier and most dangerous hooks in the West, is the kind of how I refer to this dude. He hails from a state that is known to produce some pretty darn good anglers out there in Nebraska. He's got a pedigree, pretty solid. Home right here in Colorado, and works with one of our favorite places to buy outdoors at SCHEELS. Let's welcome to the show Mr. Kaleb Zimmer. Kaleb, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, Gene. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure.
You bet, man. You bet. So, yeah, man, I meant every word of the intro. I meant you're a flat out dangerous hook. You're a threat to win anywhere you go here in Colorado. I'll be honest with you. So, state championship, we're at Pueblo. I've never been there.
Right.
My practice got cut. Okay. I had some things come up with my son. He's a college hockey player, plays for the MSU Denver Roadrunners.
Yeah.
He injured his ankle really, really bad. We had to get kind of an emergency MRI situation done to see if he was going to need surgery on it, because it was that bad.
Right. I remember that.
So it cut into my practice time for the state championship of all things. Right. And I'm like, dude, Pueblo is like the premier bass fishing spot maybe in our state, right? It's one of the most, you can fish many different ways there. It's so great. So I don't have much of a practice time to really explore. First day one of the tournament there, we start the day. I'm going to tell you a little secret. As I'm leaving, and I turn around and I see it's you following me. Yep. Do you know what that did for my confidence, bro? When I was like, dude, Caleb's going this way. Oh, okay, whatever. I'm feeling better about this. Because I wasn't sure. There wasn't a lot of people where we were at. You know, we had Kenny tucked back in a hole back over here type thing.
And he somehow found a really good limit. I don't know, man. I practiced there, and I did not find a single fish where he was. I was shocked he found a good limit back there.
Same. Yeah, I buzzed around back in there myself, and it was like, hey, it looks cool, but man, it didn't produce for me during practice. So. Yep. But yeah, dude, seriously, that's the reputation for a new guy coming into the kayak scene. You're known. You know these waters. You know what you're doing out there. So it was kind of it was like, okay, I feel a little bit better at this. And when I caught my first two, here's the other full truth disclosure. I didn't put them up on the board right away because I knew you were close to me. I'm like, I don't want him to know that I found a couple.
Hey, that's part of it. That is totally part of it. I get it. I 100% get it.
I think those were the only two fish I found the majority of the day. I think you and I, man, that was tough over there.
Man, I'll tell you. I rolled up. During practice, I roll up on a couple points, and lucky enough, being an employee at SCHEELS in Johnstown, they've been able to, help me get some gear that's pretty fun to use and stuff like that. So I have a live scope on my kayak, and I was scanning some points with it, and I was like, man, these fish are here. They're here. I didn't even, and I cast out, checked size on them, caught a couple in that 14-inch range. I know some of these tournaments, 14 inches aren't necessarily your bread and butter, but at a place like Pueblo or Horsetooth that we fish around here, in Colorado, a 14-inch fish really is, like, the way I look at it, is more like a 15 or 16-inch fish.
Elsewhere.
I want the bottom half of my limit, like my limit fish, if it's a 14-incher, I know I caught a good limit that day there.
Roger that.
And so I rolled up on some points, found a couple really good fish, and then I found a spot later on in that practice session where I was marking really good smallmouth. Wow. And I didn't even throw at them. I let them go because I was like, you know what? I'm coming here for the tournament. Yep. I turned my stuff off. I went to another spot just to try to find, that secondary location and whatnot. And I roll up there on tournament day. I go straight to that spot, and they're gone. They're not there. Typical, right? Always saw them in practice, never see them during the tournament.
you had to like the fact that since I was in front of you, I went right past your spot.
Right.
You had to like
exactly.
keep going.
Right. Exactly. I was like, all right, I got my spot. I'm good now. So I dropped the live scope down. I don't see anything. Now, not using live scope isn't like see fish, catch fish like a lot of people think it is. You know, there's a lot to it about finding structure and whatnot like that too. So
Exactly.
I knew that there was fish in the area. So I ended up catching a couple and just not the right size, not the ones I needed. I went down to the spot further down that I actually found some really good marks at as well. And they were gone. I mean, the fish totally moved out. And what ended up happening is they moved further. I'm not going to say directionally exactly where, because some people might have known where I was. But so they moved away from my spot and moved towards another area of the lake. And I thought about going there.
Right.
And it's funny, I was pedaling over that way and I see Leslie in her kayak.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna give her space. I've never been up this way. I'm not gonna go there. So I turn around and start fishing another bank, and turns out she won the tournament. So
yeah, exactly.
It was pretty funny because I was like, they had totally just pushed that way, and because I had found some really good fish in practice, and it was a lot of fun. But that's how it goes. You know, you find it. What's the saying? Like, you always catch them in practice, never in the tournament, something like that. Whatever.
Sure. You know, and in Minnesota, dude, I'll tell you, we have a lot of brown fish up there. Minnesota has a tremendous amount of smallmouth, and if there's something that smallmouth taught me, is the fact of just how freaking nomadic they are.
Man.
You cannot count on, spots with them on a constant basis.
Right.
Maybe a 24-hour period, but yeah, dude, they just, for whatever reason, they're just like deuces. They pack up and they're gone, man. They move to something else.
Right. Yeah, and I've noticed too, with the lakes that we fish here, there's a huge bait fish population, right? So Pueblo, Horsetooth, Trinidad, even, those lakes where you get those really, really solid, like you'll mark them on your graph, there'll be a giant bait ball.
Yep.
They just cruise and follow those bait balls around. When I'm at the store talking to people about, where they should go, what they should do, I asked, do you have electronics? And if you find a bait ball, stop because there's fish around. They're gonna just migrate and follow those bait fish, depending on the time of year. Obviously there's some changes with that, but at our fisheries specifically, I think there's a little bit more of that, moving in and out of areas just because they're constantly following all that bait that's running around in those reservoirs.
Well, now, and dude, you're from Nebraska, right? I mean, that's home state for you. And people don't realize just what kind of, there's some good bass fishing in Nebraska, y'all.
Oh yeah.
And if you wonder about it, just take a look at maybe say the top 10, top 20 national, rankings out there, if you will, if you could find rankings of some of the best, kayak anglers out there. They're coming from the state of Nebraska, folks. I'm telling you that right now. There's a lot of them out there.
Right.
And it's because of the diversity you guys have. But so you have that experience to pull from. Colorado fishing is kind of a unique critter. I mean, even compared to other Western type fishing, Colorado kind of has its own unique,
Oh, definitely. No, for sure. Being from Nebraska, when I first started kayak fishing, I joined a club in the state, and it was Marty Hughes, James Francis, Nate Goria. I mean, the Workmans. It was like at the time I didn't even know who I was fishing against, and actually I fished a couple tournaments against Christine Fisher. She was out there at the time.
Yep.
And looking at it now, like big picture, like I was like, holy cow. And the funny thing is, the first tournament I ever fished was we did a league out there where we would fish it was like Tuesday or Thursday nights. And the first tournament I fished, I had went to the SCHEELS in Omaha, Nebraska. I just graduated from college. I had no money. And I bought a $150 Pelican kayak that was 8 feet long. Nice. I had a pack of hooks and a pack of chompers in my life jacket. One fishing rod I bought at Goodwill in Okoboji for $2.
Yeah, baby.
And I show up and I fish the tournament, and I get out on the kayak, and one of the guys, I can't even remember who it was, he goes, man, you want to know what the only thing you can't do today is? I go, what? Because, these guys have these, fish finders and all this stuff on their boats. I never even knew it was a thing at the time. He's like, the only thing you can't do is win. With what you got sitting in front of you right there, you can't win tonight. That's the only rule. And then the next time I went, they were giving me a hard time because I didn't have an anchor and I was blowing all over the lakes. My kayak weighed 50 pounds. So I went to Lowe's. And bought half a cinder block and 20 feet of rope. And that was my anchor and my rod holder for my first 2 years of kayak fishing.
Heck yeah.
And, then from there, now it's just, it's one of those things. Now it's a total rabbit hole. Now I've got, a Hobie Outback, Garmin Graph, Live Scope. I'll carry 12 rods on my kayak with me at all times.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool to like look back and see, just kind of how where you start and where you end up with this, kayak game. And then some of the, the people I was fishing against at the time, I, no idea, what they would end up doing, winning Tournament of Champions,
Yep.
team national championships in, Louisiana and that kind of thing. To this day, I still think all the time, like, man, what would Marty Hughes do? Or what would James Francis do in this situation? Or Nate Goria? Like, what are these guys?
Yep.
What are these guys doing that I'm not?
Sure.
And, I would always, every time we'd like, have, any sort of like, before tournament captains meetings or anything, you just sit there and soak up what they're saying, just listening to every little tidbit they'll give you. Cause in the fishing world, especially around tournaments, not a whole lot of information gets shared. So
no, guys, get
any little
tight-lipped.
tidbit you can get is a big time advantage, especially coming from, some of the, that caliber of fishermen for sure.
Yeah. So you'll be happy to know Tuesday night, Marty and I sat down and had a little interview like this. So yeah, we chatted quite a bit. My first time meeting Marty, it was pretty wild. It was at Wilson last year.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, I'm still very rookie in the kayak game, right?
Oh yeah.
And it was last year was my first season there. I roll into Wilson, Kansas real late on a Wednesday. Yeah, real late Wednesday night. I'm trying out a new deal with this kind of utility trailer that I had. It's like
Gotcha.
I hauled my unlimited on that. But when I got to camp, what I did was basically take the kayak off, deploy my tent on the utility trailer, set up a cool awning. Bro,
Right.
I had myself a little bachelor crib
go.
set up here. And then the kayak just went in the back of the pickup with an extender, and it's like, we're ready to fly. So I get this all set up. I'm sweating, like Mike Tyson in a spelling bee. And if Mike's watching, don't watch Mike. I don't think he's into kayaks or fishing, so I think we're okay.
Right. Yeah, I think you're good there.
No, so it was so freaking hot, so humid. I get all set up, and then make a long story short, a freaking like microburst storm come through that night. It didn't last long, but long enough to literally rip the steel spikes out of the ground, tear my pop-up piece thing in half metal-wise, run spikes through my tent into my air mattress, puncture all of that, ripped my tent apart, and literally when it first started going, the old spidey sense went off, and I'm like, nah, dog, we're not hanging out in this. So I got in the pickup. I'm like, you know what? I put Netflix on my phone holder there, and I just sat there eating my Subway protein bowl. I'm like, yeah, we're good right here till this storm blows over.
Right.
I then hear everything. I hear the stupid topper hit my truck. I mean, it was crazy. I'm like, yeah, Kansas, here we are. This is my first trip here. Bottom line is, I abandoned camp kinda. I knew I had the campsite for the rest of the duration. I'm like, I'm going to leave my trailer here. I cleaned everything up, so it kept it neat and tidy.
Right.
But I kept checking it every day. I'd come back, and so there I am Thursday. I'm practice. I'm sleep deprived because I haven't slept much. There's this cool looking like teardrop camper off-road deal sitting over here, and I'm like, dude, that's what we really need to look at. Mm-hmm. So I roll my window down. I'm like, hey, you mind if I ask you a couple questions about your camper? This dude looks over at me and goes, no, come on in.
Right.
I start chatting with him. It's Marty.
Right. Yeah.
I had no idea who dude was.
Right.
I had no idea. He's another guy. I could tell you had a kayak. He's probably fishing this all-American, deal with me. Didn't really understand the knowledge that we had. I'd still be there asking him questions if I knew how much knowledge this dude actually did.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it is crazy. Like you just sit there and just soak it up. And I fished the national championship in Shreveport a couple of years ago now. And I remember we were sitting at the table and he was talking about what he had done that day. And he made the cut, and obviously not surprising, but, just kind of trying to take in as much as I could from him, just because there's so much vital information. I think that's one thing too, if you really want to, succeed in fishing, whatnot,
right.
Take in as much information as you can. I always joke about it. A couple of the guys I used to work with at our store, Colton Caldwell and Tommy Cruz, any success I have in this state, really is, a credit to them for sure. They, just from being where I was from, how I fish back home versus how I fish here now was totally different.
Yeah.
And, those guys were, instrumental in, kind of teaching me like, man, this isn't Nebraska anymore. We're not fishing weed lines in 6 feet of water. Like,
right.
you got to find fish in 30 or 40 feet if you want to find something with some size to it every once in a while. So
for consistency. Yeah, for
right.
sure.
Yep.
No, and that's the truth, man. We the moment I think we as anglers stop learning or we close off our head and think we've got it figured out is probably the moment you might want to consider hanging it up, because
right.
dude, you have to just be a committed lifelong learner with this sport, because
definitely
it's just not a science. As much as we want to make it a science, it's just not, man. It's an art form, and you got to adapt with that, right? And soak it up. And so, yeah, man, it was, no, you guys out here, one of the things that I did enjoy so much about the Colorado Kayak Bassmasters is when I looked at who was fishing that thing, I'm like, dude, this is a set of hammers here. Every person getting in this thing, we may only have 18, 19 folks on the roster for an event, but like every one of them can win it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
like, I'm like, that's who I need to go compete against here locally. I'm 50 years old, bro. I don't have the next 20 years. I'm on the fast track, y'all. I gotta accelerate this thing along and get moving.
Right.
So let's just go get our butt kicked now, get it out of the way.
Right. It's funny. I remember the first tournament we fished this year was at Horsetooth for CKB.
Yep.
And I remember looking at it wasn't a huge swath of guys, but I remember looking at the roster and going, man, this is going to be a real tough one. And I had found some really good spots in practice, and kind of had a really good game plan for what I was going to do that day. And so I get to the lake, start fishing the tournament, and like right away I'm catching good fish. And turns out like I end up having about, the best bag I've ever caught at Horsetooth. And I kind of thought at that point, like, okay, I've got a real good chance. And I had about 30 minutes left in the tournament. So I wanted to hit one more spot, and I roll up, I throw a cast, catch the biggest smallmouth I've ever caught out of Horsetooth. And I was like, man, I've got 79.5 inches or something. I've never even come close to that number. And I show up and Eric Ollie's got me by 2 inches. And I'm like, what the? I had never seen anyone touch 80 at Horsetooth before. I'm sure it's happened, obviously, but like
sure.
In the time I've been here, no one has ever even come close. I mean, usually like low 70s, mid 70s wins those tournaments. And he drops an 80, like an 81 and a 3/4 or something on me. And I was like, man, ouch. That was tough. But that was, that's like how it is. I mean, those, it's like, even if like I was on the right group, and I still it was still just one of those things where, that squad of guys was, it was a really tough event for sure. That was a really good tournament for like total inches, like what the whole group caught together for sure.
Well, and that's what folks around that are, I know we've got a lot of viewers here that tune into us that are from the Midwest, like Missouri, Arkansas, Iowa, that area. To put things in perspective, you can hear what Kaleb's saying out here. Like one of the major reservoirs that we fish at, it's actually going to, I think it's going to be the stage of our state championship this year for the CKB.
Cannot wait for that, by the way.
Like he said, if you look at the historic, results on that thing, to go over 80 inches is not seen very often.
No.
That's that tough stripe earning, make you learn how to drive that struggle bus with anger. You gotta absolutely just put her down and go get it.
Right.
I think that's one of the reasons why we do our anglers translate really well to travel when they go elsewhere, is because trust me, dude, your hard day of fishing, that's our good day of fishing out here. Yeah. We're used to that. And so it doesn't maybe mentally affect us as much, coming. So while there's good and bad to that, I personally am very thankful that we have, those kind of conditions here. It kind of, it sets the stage. So when I travel, it's like, this is, I love this. This is so fun. Right. Imagine if you lived in Texas and you had to come fish a trail where it was like here. You're not making that drive, dude.
What is the point of catching these fish? Like, Like seriously, like you actually score fish this small? Like you guys are actually like scoring fish that are 13 inches long? I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yep, I'm telling you. I'm telling you, it's
No,
like I'm thankful for what we have.
right. No, I'm serious. I agree with you 100%. You know, you know, like you have to be so well rounded to fish in this state. And
Yeah.
one of the cool things is you know, we'll fish a tournament at Boyd where you're going after largemouth. Now there's smallmouth in there too, and if you can find them, usually they're pretty good fish. But you have to be well rounded on both sides of the spectrum. You got to be able to catch largemouth. You got to be able to catch smallmouth. And you know, you have the opportunity for, you know, mixed bags out here, but you know, with how pressured some of the bass lakes are here, you have to really, you know, hone in your skills. And then when we get the opportunity to go fish a place, you know, in Nebraska, you know, Swanson, Red Willow, you know, those kind of places, all of a sudden it's like, holy cow, I'm catching 18 after 18 after 18. And you know, that was, you know, kind of a really, like, you really see how much it helps you when you fish these fisheries we fish where you do struggle to catch a limit. I mean, you know, sometimes we'll have tournaments, you know, where like multiple in a season where it's like, if a guy caught a limit, he won the tournament.
Right. Yeah. Some of it's just fishing pressure, it's population, it's environment. You know, that's absolutely, because like I said, you know, you take these group of anglers through the CKFC or the CKB, whichever, and you move them around. They do well, man.
Right.
They fish well. You know, this
Definitely.
is just part of the landscape we have to deal with out here. You know, the red willow thing. We go back to that one there. So I think it was actually, I'm trying to remember if it was red willow. I think it might have been Swanson, like a couple weeks before.
Mm-hmm.
The hottest temperature I have ever fished in happened at Swanson.
Right. It can get nasty out there. It can get flat out nasty.
There wasn't a whole lot of wind either, dude. That was the rough part. But
humid and hot.
Thankfully for my blackfish, you know, sun protection gear I had on, man, it kept me nice and protected. But I get back to the truck, I get everything loaded up. I'm sitting there, I'm pounding water, and I look over at the truck, and I'm like, oh, that's got to be because it's sitting in the sun. So I drive all the way back into town. I get to McCook. Okay. So it's been 25, 30 minutes driving there. That stupid temperature gauge actually went the other direction, you know, a little bit. It was 108 degrees that day. I have never fished in temperature like that ever.
Right.
But
it is. Yeah, it can get nasty out there for sure. It can get really hot, really humid, and it's just like stagnant.
Yeah.
Like no wind, nothing.
Red Willow, you know, fast forward a couple of weeks, Red Willow, at least what we had there, it was hot then too, but at least we had some wind. So when you're out on the lake, you get a little bit of breeze, and especially when we get to the awards ceremony, so people could hand you your pretty shield and your big check. Because you put the work on us that day, man. That was a fantastic deal.
That was one of my favorite tournaments I've ever fished. Not like, you know, I mean, winning it was awesome and everything, but the practice. So I show up the day before,
right,
and I had an idea of what I wanted to do. I wanted to throw a buzzbait all day, and I take a piece of surgical tubing into my kayak with me. So I'm like, I want to catch a couple, but then I want to cover my hook. So I go to a spot. First roll, it gets absolutely destroyed. I mean, it looked like it got like a freight train hit it. and I set the hook, and it was like a 17-incher, and I was like, okay, sounds good. Go to another spot, another one, just another good hit, another good hit. And I kind of get lost in like this, like, holy cow, they're going after a buzzbait. Like, this is the funnest thing in the world. They're breaching it. They look like sharks. It was like watching Shark Week. It was unbelievable. It was like I was pulling a seal behind my kayak, and they were eating it like a great white. And so all of a sudden I realized, like, oh, I haven't covered my hook because I don't want to stick all of them. And I make a cast on a bank, and I pull it across, and the biggest bass I've ever seen in my life hammers it and like hit it in the like hit the like the buzzbait on the bottom and like threw it into the air and went flying. And so I'm like burning it back, and I can see her waking back towards the buzzbait, and I'm burning it as fast as I can because I'm like, I do not want to catch you. She smokes it at my kayak again, and I'm like yanking my rod out of the water. And then I'm like, you know what? I should have just caught her. Now she saw me. Like, she's not like, what was I doing? So sure enough, after that, I covered my I covered my hook with a piece of surgical tubing. So I was like, okay, this is the bite. Like, this is what I'm going to catch him on. And I'm not kidding you. I was fighting fish that weren't hooked.
Right.
Like, yeah, they wouldn't let go of it.
Yeah.
Like, I was pulling it and they wouldn't let it go.
Dude, that's the beauty of greenfish, man. They bite first,
Right.
ask questions later. That's what I love
Right.
about them so much.
Right. And then again, I go to tournament day. I threw a buzzbait for 3 hours. No bites. Not a single fish. I didn't get touched once. Like nothing.
Yep.
There was no fish on the buzzbait. Nothing.
I found the same results on
Man.
the other end of the lake because
Right.
I gambled because I was using kind of my local circuit there as my gambling circuit because it's
Right.
like, you know what, I'll try different things out with this one that I maybe wouldn't do in the All-American.
Right.
So I went to the opposite end of the lake from where all you guys were.
Right.
I was up in those trees back in there, dude, and I was standing up and pitching and flipping into that, and I ran a buzzbait up there. Yeah, nothing on a buzzbait at all.
Yeah. Like I think at 11 a.m. I caught one. I had 118 and a quarter. And so I was like, you know what? I drove by a spot because I got off the water during practice kind of early. So I was like, okay, I got the bite. But I was like, I want to look at what this one spot that I fished, previously, what it looked like because the water was so low.
Right.
So I drove by and I was like, okay, if something, changes, maybe I'll head over here. So I decide at 11, like, okay, I'm scrap this. This isn't working anymore.
Right.
I'll go over there, throw on a chomper Senko. First cast, I catch a 16 and a half. So I'm like, okay, that's a solid one. And then I finally found a little bit of a pattern that I can't necessarily discuss, but found a little bit of a pattern that was a little bit of like live scope with a little bit of just like nuance to how to fish a Senko.
Sure.
And so I would find this specific thing that I'm looking for underwater with my live scope, and I flip the Senko onto it, and I can see the Senko fall, and I would drag it, and right when it would fall in front, I would see a little quick flash on my screen, and then my line, I'd look at my rod, and my line would be running straight out.
Yeah.
And then it was 5-pounder, 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 5-pounder. I mean, I was literally like screaming like a little kid because it was just over and over again. So then I finally, it's like 1:30, and I'm like, all right, I think I got this, locked up. Like I've got 80, yeah. I think I had 87 inches. I had a really good bag, but I had a 14 and a half that I had kind of as my limit fish. And for whatever reason, I look at my phone and I look at the standings, and Josh Unger had got me by a half inch, and he was beating me by a half inch. And the reason I thought that the 14 and a half wouldn't matter is because not very many people were even filling limits that day.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, I've got 20 minutes. Man, I threw and threw and threw and threw, and I got nothing. And it's like 1:50, tournament ends at 2. And I'm like, man, if I end up losing by a half inch, this is going to be terrible. This is so brutal. I got so many good fish today. Like, come on.
Right.
I'm like, okay, I got one more spot that I saw when I was coming into this area that had some similar stuff that I was catching fish on over here. And I'm like, yeah, but it's like a 6 or 7 minute pedal just to get there. Cause like we're talking about, with boat and kayak, like I've got to take into account how long it's going to take me to get somewhere.
Yep.
Even if it's only a little stretch. And so I'm like, okay, if I get there, I'm gonna have like 5 minutes. That's realistically going to give me about one cast to catch, get into the boat, put on the board, whatnot. So I roll up to it, and I'm like kind of in a panic, and I'm about to cast, and I say to myself, like, dude, just relax a second, get yourself in position, fish. Make a cast. I look at my watch, and it's like 1:57. I make a cast, it goes in, and I just see a huge swirl. And I'm like, please be a largemouth. And I just see my line running just straight across out to the center of the lake. I reel up the slack, set the hook, and I'm like, oh, it is an absolute giant. Like, it is a stud. Please don't be a wiper.
Right.
I get him to the boat. I see him, and I'm like, that's the biggest fish I've caught today, for sure. No question. And so as I'm scooping him with my net, my line snaps. And I scoop him out like he's in my net as my line snaps. I get him on the board, and I'm just like taking pictures as fast as I can.
Right.
And the picture I took was at 1:59. Like that was that was when I took the first picture of him. Because I knew I like it was I think he was 19 and a half inches. So he ended up being my, winning kicker fish. But I get back and we walk up and Josh looks at me and he goes, "Did you get me?" And I go, "Dude, I got the luckiest I've ever been in my life. You don't even want to know the story."
Right.
But yeah, it was like an insane, like last minute walk off, fish at the horn just to win it. It was pretty cool. That was one of the funnest days I've had fishing, just because of the size of fish and
well, and a lot that comes with it is who you're fishing with and against, out there, dude. It really does drive that. It was one of the things that, like I said, while I don't fish many of their events, that's just an equipment situation is the reason why we don't. The CKFC has some of the coolest people in the kayak community that we've seen out there, in our state. And I say this many times over and over again, but we are so lucky to have these two clubs because they both kind of represent a different sector, but yet same philosophy is involved across the board. The same community vibe that hits you. I can tell you, as a new guy coming in, I've been welcomed around every corner with the CKFC, with the CKB, across the board out there. And it's one of the pieces that, learning the ropes, I know Alex Rojas was huge in giving me just tons of initial information when I was first getting into the kayak thing, just helping me with a lot of do's and don'ts, kind of, the basic fundamental pieces as I'm coming from the deck, 96-inch deck on my boat over to this thing, and I'm like, here we go. I've never been in a fishing kayak before. Now I've got a new Canoe Unlimited sit in front of me. Looks cool. I hope it's stable. I don't want to get wet. Although I will say, kayak world, dude, my feet get more wet now than they ever have. When I mean, in my boat, my stuff was dry, man. I wore socks and sneakers to get in my boat. I was pretty bougie out there compared to what I've got now. But that type of, kayak community piece, it's across the nation. I can tell you that.
Really?
I've gone from Pickwick, Tennessee to, La Crosse, down into Bull Shoals, Arkansas. I mean, just in 1 year, making that, and you run across that, but there's something extra special about it to me, about these clubs and the people that are involved there.
Right. I think it's, having the ability, having a state where you have two series that you can fish, somebody like me who's just gung-ho crazy for it and just I'll fish as many tournaments as I can, it's awesome because you have so many opportunities to do it. And, I think too, like if you look at it on a national scale, some of the turnout that we'll get for, those CKFC tournaments, we have like over 50 people.
Yeah.
We had to get literally Horsetooth limits, like the size. We get cut off at 50. When I first started and I was fishing in Nebraska, we were, a big turnout would be, 20, 25 guys.
Sure.
I'm sure, they have a ton of different, series now too. And it's gotten a lot bigger since then, obviously. But yeah, when I got out here, I was really worried that I was going to lose that part, this new sport that I had just found that was so much fun. But now that we have two clubs, both doing very well. And like I said, I mean, the turnout, I think we had almost 60 guys at Pueblo at the CKFC event last year.
Yep.
And even, I was lucky enough, I met Dan DeRue from Fox 31 at SCHEELS one day.
Nice.
And ended up, they had heard about CKFC. Like they had heard about it and they were wanting to do a story on it. And we ended up, being able to go out up till, Horsetooth and take Dan and his cameraman Cody out fishing. And it turns out Cody, his cameraman, had just bought a new kayak and was like looking to get into the sport.
Very cool.
And so I was like telling my man, hey, join the CKFC, we're the CKB, come fish some tournaments with us. You'll have a blast. And so it's just kind of that, it is a really big deal in our state, and I think it has to do too with the size of the, the bodies of water that we have where, some of this, it's a little bit easier to fish out of a kayak than a boat in certain situations as well.
100% agree, because when I first got here, I had a 21-foot bass boat. And when we built our new home when we were moving here, because that was going to be the only way we could actually secure getting a house because of how the market was. It was,
Insane.
We were coming from out of state, so it's like, you know what, we're just going to build. I
Mhm.
built we have a 3-car garage, but my second bay is tandem, so it's technically 4. I built that
Right.
for my boat, so it can fit
Right.
back in there, so I didn't have to pay storage, right?
Yeah.
And I get out here and I start looking around at the bodies of water. Then I start realizing just how freaking crowded. I mean, there's some of these days, dude, you could walk across these lakes on the bows of boats.
Right.
And I'm just thinking to myself, unless I'm going out on a Tuesday at 5 a.m., I am just not quite sure how much I'm going to be doing this, and
Right.
the same considerations still happen with the kayak, but it's a little bit different because you can
Right.
find other options, and places
Oh,
you can
100%.
go to. So,
Definitely. Yeah. You have a lot. There's a lot of water here.
yeah,
But it's not like, these giant lakes that you have, Pickwick or, some of those lakes where there's like, hundreds of miles of shoreline.
it's not the TVA. Yeah.
And like you said, at Horsetooth, sometimes you're fighting a wake boat, Jimmy's in his dad's wake boat and he's a case of beer deep by 12 in the afternoon and he doesn't see you and you're waving and running away from him because he's going to run you over, throw his wake and flip you.
Exactly.
But,
it's one of the things that led us to searching out, for the True Patriot Outfitters. It's what we were so hell-bent on finding private waters, finding small.
Right.
We found a home at Stanley Lake now that does not allow trailered boats into it anymore. And
Right.
dude, that has created, it's a wildlife refuge, and it's a 2/3 of it, you can have a motor on it. Electric motor is all they allow.
Right.
But then there's a third of it that is paddle only.
Right.
And I'm telling you right now, for you guys that are paddle, there's an invasive species in that water they don't like, but bass sure as hell love it, and that's milfoil.
Yep.
Dude, there are some gems hiding in that milfoil in that no motor area.
Right.
Because not a lot. It's a big spawny area, so they don't migrate far from there. The forage is plentiful. You want to have a day, just head on out there, dude.
Man, man, I'm telling you, I've wanted to go to Stanley so bad. If you look at the sampling reports on that lake, I think even the state record walleye came out of there.
I wouldn't doubt it.
If I'm not mistaken. I don't know if it still holds as the state record or not, but I know at one point I think it did come out of that lake. But
the side towards the dam has a lot of good deep ledges and such.
Right.
There's like a 25-foot ledge when the lake's at normal pool, 25 foot down, there's this big ledge right at the dam that kind of kicks out. And that usually is holding something in there because you'll find some sporadic boulders on that with your down scan. And you'll usually find a couple smallies hanging out down there, and there is walleye in there. Yeah, you can fish it in many different ways. The only, I would say it's chink in its armor is just the fact that it doesn't have very good shoreline fishing.
Right.
Because it's so sandy for such a long time before you get to any type of personality of any kind, any weeds or any ledges or
right. Because that's the thing, I tell people all the time. I think the thing I miss the most about fishing in Nebraska is just finding weed, fishing mats and stuff like that. You go to if you can, what we consider a weed line here, like a mat here. It's like, what are you talking about, man? I frog here with 40-pound braid. Back home, it was like, if you had less than 65, what are you doing?
Right.
You can't even set the hook on a fish with that.
Trust me, Minnesota natural lakes up there. Yeah, raccoons can walk across that stuff, dude. It's so thick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a giant sloppy mess. And out here, it's like, man, you find a little patch of it, and it's like, oh my gosh, I got a mat.
Usually, the beauty is though, it's usually holding fish. That's how I.
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%. No matter what, there's a group of ponds I fish here locally too, and they've got awesome. I mean, the vegetation in these ponds is just absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And they spray it every year, and it drives me up the wall. And it's got great size largemouth, like really, really good quality fish. And every year they spray it, and I try to tell them, like, guys, the reason the fish are big and they're so healthy in this pond is because of this. Quit spraying it. I get it at a certain point, it gets out of control or whatnot, but it's always fun to find, those weed edges or those isolated grass mats. That was some of my favorite stuff to fish back home. Finding those just out in the middle of the lake, boom, here's a grass mat. And you're like, all right, there's definitely going to be some fish on this somewhere.
Well, and one of the things in Colorado, we'll absolutely say this, and I mean, no disrespect to any organizations whatsoever out there, but bass really are not that important to folks because when you
Right.
hear Colorado, you think fly fishing, you think trout.
Trout.
When you hear kayak, you think whitewater. What
Mhm.
we do is kind of an oddity because it usually takes a minute or so. Like when we're offering kayak fishing to veterans, first responders, they
Mhm.
look at with lifted eyebrows. I'm like, hold on. First off, the kayak I'm talking about isn't a sit in. I'm not going to take you down a river with a fishing pole telling you to hold on. I'm like,
Right.
dude, it is a Cadillac. This
Right.
unlimited is a stable state. You can
Oh yeah.
stand in this thing, no problem.
Easily.
So I explain that to them and then I show them pictures and then they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But
A little different than I thought it was.
yeah, bass are kind of that same thing out here. People are like, really, bass, Colorado? It's like, the majority brown, but there are a few places where you're going to find some really, unpressured green ones because people
Right.
just usually, if they catch them, it's by mistake,
Yeah.
type thing, unless you're the, few of us that go actually targeting for them and trying to hunt for them. So,
Yeah, I've talked to a few guys in the fishing shop at our store that call them green carp.
ditch pickles, huh?
Right. Yep. I'm like, come on, guys. Come
Yeah.
on.
There's a section I want to say it's the Yuma, but I'm probably wrong on that. There's one of these gold star rivers for trout in the state down
It's a
south.
Yampa.
Yampa. There you go.
Yep.
There's a section of this that the CPW released the statement a few years ago that smallmouth bass have been found in here and they are considered rough fish. So there's no limit. Get them out of here because they're absolutely dominating the trout. They're
Right. Right.
smallmouth is just far more aggressive and I just think
yeah.
far smarter and more durable than these dainty little
Right.
deer of the river trout that are.
Right. Yeah, like I remember. So funny story. My first ever like real fly fishing on a river experience was hilarious because coming from the bass world, like it's just a totally different animal.
Oh yeah.
And so we were doing a training at our store on Euro nymphing. So it's just kind of, just like a little roll cast, finding some, soft water, eddies, whatever you want to call it. And so the fly shop manager at the time was kind of, showing me the ropes, kind of showing me how to do it, what to do, yada, yada, yada. And so I flip over and like I get bit and I take a step back and I jack that fish out of the water. I mean, it went flying over my shoulder. And the fly shop manager's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He ate it. I set the hook. Like, I got to bury the hook. Like, I got to catch him. And he was like, you've got to be insane. Like, what the heck was that? And so then the next fish, I boat flipped to myself. And he's like, what are you? You got to keep him in the water. And I'm like, I totally just have no idea.
No.
What's going, like, how, like, I didn't know there was like a certain, etiquette and protocol for fish handling.
They're fragile little creatures.
They
man.
are. I didn't realize how fragile they were. Now I know. So if I catch them, I try to be as,
Jim,
follow the rules as much as I can.
So Strawbridge and I were up at Horsetooth. Season was over last year. I think it was like November, December, whatever. We're up at Horsetooth. And he's given me a good drop shot clinic, up there. Cause I knew how to drop shot, but I didn't have a ton of confidence with it. Cause I am a power angler and I'm skinny water guy. That's what I do. But I knew if I was going to be out here, I needed to improve the game. So I was like, let's go out with somebody who really knows what they're doing. That way it'll help build my confidence in it. Yep. So we're out there, and I think this is like the second or third day that we all met up. Matt Flanagan was out there with us. We're all just kind of fishing around. And I get on this school of fish in about 25 foot of water, and I start yoinking them. It's these stinking trout. They're just tearing my Berkeley flatworms apart, dude. They're just going after them. By the time I get these stupid fish in, my drop shot rigging is just hammered. They have spun it around 6 ways to Sunday, and I'm like...
Right. They death roll like alligators.
They do.
It's like unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I know. And that's a great guy to learn a drop shot. How to drop shot though, from for sure.
Strawbridge?
Yeah. Me and him have had some conversations about what he does and stuff, and it's pretty impressive because he's, I'm totally, like I said, I'm a live scope guy through and through. I think in this world, the most fun that you can have with two hands is drop shotting smallmouth vertically on live scope. Yeah. Like when you watch one come in and just absolutely hammer it, and you set the hook and you watch the fish go, up your stream. Yeah, it's the most fun you can have with two hands. Personally, that's what I think.
If you
and he
want to
uses
be,
2D. He's like still using 2D sonar.
I was going to say, if you want to be impressed, watch what this guy does with 2D. How
it's incredible.
He turns it basically into live scope in a way.
Right. I know. I'm like, man, why? Like, you have a live scope and you're using 2D sonar.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
And he does it effectively. You know, that's the thing.
He'll outfish me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's so impressive how well he uses that 2D. And I mean, I honestly, like, being dead honest, like, I even run my 2D split with my live scope now.
Yeah.
When I'm drop shotting.
Oh.
Specifically just from having conversations with him, like, about what he's looking for.
Yeah.
And, you know, it actually has helped me a ton, even with the live scope side of it, because I can kind of get a better idea of what's going on.
Dude, I've been doing this for a hot minute, and I had always kind of, you know, touted myself on understanding traditional sonar pretty well. I needed to understand a few other aspects and things, but I'll tell you what, I went out there. He showed me how to use my 2D in ways that I had no clue that you could do it with, nor the most subtlest pixel pieces that he's talking about in these things. I had no idea really what that meant. He's showing me what that means, and yeah, it was. I am forever grateful.
Oh yeah,
and that's that we started this conversation with. Man, is always learning. You know, there's a guy out there that's trying something.
Yep.
This is a great topic piece here to come over. You are a huge proponent of. You love using it, and that's the the front forward facing sonar.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you? So you currently are you using live scope, or are you using a different brand right now?
So I use the Garmin live scope.
Nice.
I used both the LVS 32, which was like the first real like live scope.
Yep.
They had a LVS 12 that was out for a little while, and then they jumped to the 32, and then they just released the 34.
34,
which is live scope plus.
So so I'm a 32 guy. That's what I have.
Yeah. Yeah.
32, 34. Is it as big a difference as some guys are making it out to be?
You know, so
clarity, target separation, that sort of thing?
Yes. That's where I would say the biggest difference for going from a 32 to a 34 is my ability to see things at distance.
Nice.
Like, not saying the 32 is a bad unit. Like, it's not. I mean, it's still incredible. I used it a ton and had a ton of success with it. But the thing I realized with the 34 is, I manipulated my transducer so it actually faces a little bit more towards the surface of the water.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And being a bass fisherman, that was really helpful because I could see where my lure would actually enter the water at.
Nice.
On the 32, once you got beyond that 65, 70 feet, realistically, unless you really know what you're looking at, it was really hard to see a lure at that distance. It gets a little bit tough.
Yep.
I could watch my lure with the 34 enter the water at 100 feet, sink to the bottom, and I could watch it come all the way back.
That's awesome.
So, and again, whether or not that's, exactly what somebody wants, the 32 is still a great option for sure. Or active target with Lowrance, or even the Mega Live for, Humminbird, all have their advantages.
Sure.
And all of the forward facing stuff is, just blowing up right now. But yeah, I had a lot of luck with that 34, the plus transducer. I think Garmin absolutely killed it with, there was a difference. Now, granted, if you hadn't used a 32, you really probably wouldn't notice anything because it's the only live scope you've ever used, obviously.
Exactly.
But, I think the part where people get kind of, confused or don't really know 100%, if they don't have success with their word live scope, I think goes back to what, you were taught with 2D or down scan or side imaging is don't catch that fish. There's times where, I'll look out and I'll see a fish, catch that fish. But when I really got good with it, like when I really started to use it appropriately and I really noticed like, okay, I'm catching more fish with it, was when I used it to find structure.
Exactly.
And when I used it, like, I can't, like, being able to see 100 feet in front of me before I run something over.
Exactly.
It's huge. Like this year, I never had fished before. I might have lost you.
You there, Caleb?
I think I lost you there for a second.
Yeah, we lost total connection there.
That was weird.
It picked back up recording here, so I'll just edit that little section out
Okay.
when the video comes in.
Yeah.
Some
But-
good stuff. So yeah, man, like you said, that predictive ability, and there's clubs that I've heard of, which I'll go on record saying this is my opinion only, not any of my sponsor, anybody I'm associated with.
Mhm.
There's clubs out there that have forward facing not going to be allowed in the club. I've heard out there.
Right.
Oh my God, that's flash your unit back up there, Jeb.
Right.
You know,
this is what I think, and again, like you're saying, like this is a totally opinion based on
Yeah.
my end. I think people that feel that way, that like think it's cheating, haven't used it.
exactly.
Because if you've actually used it, like, yeah, you know what? When I watch, Milliken or Josh Jones watch the screen and catch a giant bass on an A-rig, like, yeah, that happens.
Sure.
But for every one of those, there's a lot more frustrating times where you throw the kitchen sink at a fish and he doesn't eat.
Sure.
He doesn't want it. Nothing, it doesn't matter.
And what people don't understand and track with our sport is they see the one cast.
Right.
What they don't see is the 4,000 other casts that guy made with that same tool and got jack crap, on it out there.
Exactly.
They don't see that. They just see the one cast. Oh, look at him. They're just taking all the fun out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
yeah,
like,
no,
dude,
and that's the thing. I just, if you've really used it, I've literally had to tell myself like times like, it's a carp, and then just move on to just go. Like it's a giant mark. I know it's a bass. And I'm like, it's a carp. I just got to tell myself it's a carp and move on to the next spot.
Right.
Like, you got to get off the fish. Because I've caught myself times where it's like, like I'm going over and over. I'm like, man, I've spent 30 minutes trying to catch this fish. I'm wasting time. He's not eating.
Exactly.
You got to move on. So that was my trick. Guy said it to me at work, and I stole it from him. Like, it's a carp.
Exactly.
And just move on to the next one.
No, that's we're at a situation now where I had it last year. I used it in several cases. Used it down at Trinidad when we were down there, and the moment I put it up and just went fishing again is when I actually got healthy on the scoreboard there, because I found myself kind of stuck to it too much.
Right.
Now I take it with me, and after talking and kind of looking at how James set his up with a switch on it, I want to be able to cut the power so that GLS-10 is not pulling power all day long from
100%.
my 30 amp battery up front.
Right. Well, and that's the thing too. Like I tell people too, you get on the right group of fish. Like I'll find them on live scope, cast, catch one. I turn that thing off.
Yeah.
Because I'll have my 2D running or whatever. But every once in a while, I've found like, their lateral line is really sensitive.
Big time.
And they pick up on really subtle changes in the water. And I do think at times, like that, the frequency that's going out in the water, not necessarily like scares them, but I think it gets them a little bit on edge and they might not be as apt to eat in that situation. So I've actually even like cut power, and I know where the fish are. I'm going to keep casting in that area. And I've actually done better doing that at times too.
There's an arguable claim to be made for that. There's some guys that absolutely maintain that, and then there's other guys that don't think that's the case. But I think there's enough evidence, like what you just said, that says that there's a possibility here that this could exist.
Right.
And when a quarter inch separates you from about $600 difference in a check, dude, you'll take every chance.
Right.
If it's something I can control, I'm going to adjust it.
I don't care if it's real or not. If I think I have a chance to do better, then I'm going to do it. I don't care if it's actually scientifically backed or not.
Exactly.
Right. Hey, how long does that 30 amp hour battery that you run work? Like how long can you run your unit on?
All day.
And are you running your graph, your live scope box, and your trolling motor on it?
No.
Okay.
It's always suggested that you keep your trolling motor and your graphs on different power sources.
Okay, and that's what I always say too.
Yeah.
Just because you throw too much interference from the trolling motor to your graph if you end up running them.
No, I got an Amped Outdoors 80 amp hour 12 volt that sits in the back that I've got in-hull wiring that I've connected my XI3 to. Yep. I run that, and then for that thing that controls my nav lights, any phone charger that I need, my Garmin 93 SV, and my live scope, that all runs on a 30 amp hour Amped Outdoors. Now, I will say, if I'm running all day long And especially if I forget to turn off my nav lights, I got a little switch on my gear pod up front that I can turn those off after, sun comes up. But if I run all day long with the live scope and the Garmin and I'm really, pushing it, swapping screens and really, running through the stuff, it's pretty tight on like a 10, 12 hour day.
Right.
Because I get down to the end there, man, when I take it back to camp and I plug it into the charger, it's still charging by the time I go to bed. It's still trying to bring itself back up. Right. And it's like when I wake up at, 4:00, whatever in the morning, she's green. Everything's good to go. Then it's like, so I will push it, but I actually prefer that because I know I'm getting the maximum efficiency out of this thing.
Oh yeah. Those amp batteries. Yeah. Like we're a retail location that carries Amped Outdoors.
I was so happy when I saw that.
Oh man, it's we've had a ton of luck with them. They've been an awesome vendor for us just in the lithium world. Everything's going lithium. And
dude, Matt is such great people. The owner of Amped is such a good human being.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
I can tell you now, I can make this almost kind of like the official. Everybody hears me talking about them. They've joined on with me as on the fishing side this year. I'm now partnering with these guys.
That's great.
Last year they kind of helped me, but they were more definitely there to help me with the nonprofit work.
Right.
This year he's down for nonprofit. He says, keep me in the know, let me know, what's up with that on special events. But he has taken care of me now to help my season this year coming up with Amped. And I'm like, dude, I just can't thank, I would sow these small businesses that take care of their customers.
Right.
Dude, I absolutely love them.
Well, and that's the part, at SCHEELS, like you just said, literally one of the main things at our store is take care of the customer.
Yep.
And we love the fact that Amp does that too. They've been a great vendor for us, like I said. And we've had really, really good luck with the 20 and 30 amp hour batteries. And, it's funny. It's like, I sell a guy at, a graph or whatever for his kayak, and, they get like the 10 or 12 amp hour, which works great. I have a 12 amp hour lithium battery that I use that realistically I can run my 73 SV Garmin for, a couple days before I have to charge it just because it's a smaller screen.
Right.
And it's funny, they'll come back and they'll be like, hey, you have any of those 20 amp hours or those 30 amp hours? And it's like, yeah, I got one right here. We'll get you all set up and ready to roll with it. But yeah, it's that lithium stuff, their batteries are they're really impressive. I had a guy come in the other day and was like, man, you told me this 20 amp hour is going to run my like live scope setup for like, anywhere from 8 to 12 hours. He's like, I couldn't believe you weren't lying. Oh. No. I was like, yeah, man, I know. I'm telling you, this stuff is legit. It's not a joke.
And when you get a solid quality build like Amped is, it maintains that power output up until it doesn't.
Right.
It doesn't like slowly die. Like the old days when, your flashlight would get dim or whatever. No, it's good, gone. Right. So you have full power for that range. If you just do the math on it, you can tell how long you're going to be pulling.
And even the lifespan of the battery is better. Yeah. Like a standard lead acid, man, if you get a year out of that thing, like it performed for you.
Especially the way we treat them.
Right, exactly. Like up and down, just burning that sucker up. Every chance you get, it's going to zero. Yep. And the cool thing is too, like with this lithium stuff that's out now, I believe Amped, I could be wrong on this. If I am, I'm sorry, but they have a 14.8 volt.
They do.
And the forward-facing sonar game is what created this. If you can run more volts, because your black box can take up to 24 volts, I believe, if I'm right. And there's like 16 volt, 15 volt batteries now, and it's like, if you've seen any videos comparing them, it is a massive difference.
Yeah.
And I actually have a buddy that just got that 14.8 volt. I was pretty sure it was Amped, but I wasn't for sure. And he sent me a video from his live scope, and I was blown away.
So
it's a legitimate thing.
Unofficially, this was going on for the longest time. And this is so last year there was Amped kind of ran out of a few batteries. They were out of stock on a few things. The reason why wasn't a shipping, what am I trying? Was it
supply chain?
Yeah, it wasn't a supply chain issue. It was a flat out order, because what was taking place, and this is a little scuttlebutt behind the scenes, like I said, no one's going to deny or not deny, but this is what was happening. When Garmin, you'd call Garmin up to talk with them, and there was some issues with certain deals. They would ask, what batteries are you running? they were directing, their tech support line was directing people to Amped because of the 14.8. They said, we're not affiliated with them, but if you're looking for a battery that really meets our specs, that's kind of the one you need to be going to.
Ding, ding.
And so when you got a company the size of Garmin, dude, shoving business your way, and all you had
Big
to
time.
do was build a good product.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big
No,
time.
and I love the fact that they keep their prices legitimate, man. It's
Man,
like,
you're 100% with you.
they're
there,
not
too.
breaking the bank on you,
Right.
you know,
Right.
to get things
Yeah,
done.
I tell people all the time, like they'll look at something, they're like, that's a $140 battery. I'm like, to be honest with you, if you want to, think about it, get on your phone and just Google lithium battery.
You're gonna like what you see.
I'm not trying to say like you're being cheap. Not what I'm getting at. Just
Nope.
Google it really quick and see all the, like, everything that pops up, and you'll go, oh, that's actually not a bad price.
And yeah,
even in their 80 amp or 100 amp hour batteries that we carry too.
very reasonable.
Right, 100%. And you know, those have gotten. That was one thing, you know, that got really, really impressive this year with us was guys in the boat world.
Yeah.
You know, like, hey, you run 2 of these 100 amp hours and, you know, put them in series and get your 24 volts, man, that 80 amp hour, or, you know, that 80 pound thrust trolling motor you have, Garmin Force, or
You're going for days,
Robo,
baby.
yeah,
you're going for days.
Yeah. And you're going to get on plane a lot quicker, bud, because you don't have 600 pounds in the front where the standard lead acid batteries.
Isn't that the truth? That's another cool thing. Amped actually has built a smaller, and it's a kayak specific battery.
Mm-hmm.
It's high amp hour output, small package there for those of us in the kayak. So I love the fact that they're paying attention to our industry.
Oh, 100%.
You know, and they
100%.
know that we're going to be, you know, one of those sets. Listen, man, this has brought me right all circled around here to one area here, because I don't think I've ever actually done this, even just with you and I talking. Before I tell this story to our listeners here, I want to extend to you a massive thank you. And what this massive thank you comes from is last year with the Romans Warrior Foundation, when we were trying to get this kayak fishing thing off the ground, we had this vision. We know the health impact. We know the benefits that getting folks that are working their way through some stuff, getting them outdoors, helping them engage the outdoors. We know for a fact that this is medically backed. It helps. It is a complementary therapy piece. So we were pushing heavy with this passion. There's been an evolution that now the TPO is now the face of Colorado. I'm still with Romans Warrior, of course. We still do the field ops. That's more of a national thing, though. But TPO's right here in Colorado. This is, you know, and it's our sole job is just kayak fishing, dude. That's what we do.
That's awesome.
To get that going, it took so many people coming together. Of course, New Canoe, massive impact that Blake Young and that entire company gave us. But easily running side by side with them on the impact was you and just the entire SCHEELS organization, the community team, and you and I having the chance, brother, to sit there and talk in the store and look at different items.
Right.
I told you that from day one, whatever we give these guys, when it comes to a PFD, I wanted to put them in a quality PFD,
Right.
because it's something that it is my opinion that's where you don't cut cost. Okay?
No.
There's places you can skimp.
Right.
I personally think you don't skimp on a PFD, y'all. That
No.
I mean, you're talking your livelihood here.
Right. 100%. 100%. Yeah.
You
No
helped
question.
balance that out. You helped walk me through that entire department. And by the time we were said and done, we had a paddle, a PFD, a net, fishing poles. We have tools, pliers, and such that every one of these kayaks get. And we had that little pool of those rods and reels and tackle boxes to give these warriors to take with them when they're all said and done, right from SCHEELS. And dude, you were right at the heart of making all that happen for us, brother. And I just can't thank you enough. We're still, if you can see them, they're sitting right there. Those are the SCHEELS outfitters. Those are the giveaways right there.
Yeah, exactly.
We keep them warm in the wintertime.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You got to keep them inside. Mine are upstairs in my attic right now, because I don't want that reel grease to freeze. You know what I'm saying?
That's right. That's right.
But no, that was really cool to be a part of, and you know, SCHEELS. That's one of the main things that we really love to do is, you know, find these nonprofits that are doing great work and give back to the community in, you know, any way we can. And so no, I honestly, we as SCHEELS and myself, thank you for allowing us to be involved with it. And it was definitely an honor to help set up some stuff for you so that you could get some get some people that deserve it on the water.
That's what I'm saying is that you guys that were there in the very beginning concept of this to help us get off the ground and get rolling. We had the vision. We had a lot of we had the tenacity to keep this thing going,
right,
and the time commitment and the passion to make it there. But we needed resources, man, to get boots on the ground. And if it weren't for you and of course, I keep thinking Janae. Janae is with marketing. I love her to death. Why am I forgetting Caitlin? There we go. I knew I'm old. Okay. Names and I are dumb. Caitlin and her countless hours of work to help us and coordinate this with you at, in the camping side there.
Yep.
Yeah, man, we're very, very proud to spread the SCHEELS name. If you look in several of my flyers, which embarrassingly enough, they're all downstairs. But in our intro, you'll see one of the pictures at the very end is a couple of, these are Purple Heart recipient warriors that I went and spent time with in Vienna, Missouri. Mm-hmm. You notice they're holding up a pair of fish, and look at their hats they're wearing. They're SCHEELS Colorado hats. Awesome. Because they loved that stuff. When we brought them that swag and such, they were. Yeah,
that's awesome.
And all they kept asking was, who's SCHEELS? Because they're from down south. SCHEELS isn't down there.
Yeah, there's none down there yet. So it's, we got one in Texas, but that's, it's kind of an untapped territory for sure.
Yeah. Well, I tried to bring it up. Our cell reception was real spotty out there, but I tried to bring it up on my phone. Like, here, man, SCHEELS Online. Just go here, dude.
I have some stuff up there.
I bought 2 trolling motors off SCHEELS Online. I bought my live scope off of SCHEELS Online. Right. And what do people give me for birthday presents? You damn right, baby. SCHEELS gift cards. They know where I'm at.
Right. Exactly. That's awesome. That's really cool.
We try to tell people that, when you see me with a name of a company around it, it is not because of a monetary piece. I'm not that big, y'all. All right. I'll tell you that right now. I don't demand that much. The reason absolutely these companies help us on our mission, but it's because I believe in you guys, dude. I believe in, and if I believe in them, I'll put my name next to it 100%.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate that.
Yeah, brother, that was, like I said, we'll keep this thing going. I've got some cool stuff I want to share with you off air. We're trying to put together, we'll make announcements and such that I think might be a cool opportunity for everybody. So we'll look at that. Well, listen, man, I am so let's talk real quick before I let you go here. This season, you work a ton. You're a busy dude.
Right.
But when we're looking at the CKB schedule, how many of those, are you going to go try to defend that title at Red Willow on the 2-dayer, homie, at the beginning of June?
Man, I'm telling you, I'm going to fish as many as I can. Kind of funny. I'm getting married this year. Both of my best friends are getting married this year.
Congratulations,
I've got
brother.
All this stuff crammed into the first couple months of the year, and I'm going to fish as much as I possibly can. I'm hoping to do that one. I'm getting married on June 24th, so June 1st, and that first weekend, it's going to be a little tight.
Bachelor party, 3rd and 4th.
I'm going to get out.
Bachelor party, 3rd and 4th, McCook, Nebraska. Let's do it.
Let's do it. I bet we could stay at a Motel 8 for like a month for less than any other bachelor party trip we're going to do.
And they don't leave the light on.
No, they don't.
Tracks bugs, y'all.
Right.
We're not dumb.
Stay there for the whole weekend for like $50 if we really wanted to.
Bro, I'll tell you, I love McCook.
Campsites are $10 there.
Yeah, I love McCook. I love that area.
That place.
The people are so freaking friendly to anglers. They love it when we come into town. They treat us really, really well. I stay at this little hotel a lot, but this year I'll be camping that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is what a cool area. I literally stayed in McCook for the Swanson deal and for the Red Willow because it's like right in the middle of the two.
Right. I know. I could move to McCook just based on the fishing opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. It's close
to some really good spots for sure.
Exactly.
But yeah, we're gonna fish as many as we can this year. I'm hoping to do, especially from July on for sure. Cool. I'm gonna try to fish the couple in April. Both my buddies are getting married in April though, so it's gonna make it a little tough to swing those. But yeah, May I'm gonna try to maybe get to one, and then once we get into the back half of the year for sure. Really excited about that championship at Horse.
Dude, September is going to be just lights out.
Right.
Listen, keep us in mind if you want to stretch out and go take some suckers money on the national trail stuff. If if you're looking at Mine Lands or something or any of those, and you're interested in a travel, buddy to help split some cost or something at some lodging or whatever, keep me in mind out there, man. I'm
Awesome.
absolutely
Yeah, no, let's
to make it a little more affordable for everybody. So
definitely. No, 100%. I've been looking at starting to do some more of those national tournaments, with the All-American and some of that stuff, especially with some of the stuff getting a little closer out this way for sure.
Right.
So yeah, definitely. I will definitely keep you in mind for that, because
I was so bummed when Bass put PK on the same weekend that our 3rd and 4th Red Willow was at, because I wanted to do Possum Kingdom so bad. I really did. But the way I look at it is, dude, I'm already doing Lake of the Pines at the beginning of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And, I won a challenge for AOI in the CKB. This year
100%.
This year CKB isn't a testing ground for me like it was last year. Last year I took wild risks and such.
Right.
No, this year I'm coming for that damn
go.
shield, yo. I mean, that's
what I'm talking about.
Because there is, now that I fully understand this, that is a crown to be very proud of. AOI. Trev, locking that up last year, not by much either. Jason was right on his tail, man. And James right behind them. That's awesome stuff. And that's something to be proud of. If you can best that field, man, that's not no joke.
It's a group of sticks for sure.
Yep. Well, listen, brother, thank you so much for stopping by, spending part of your day off here with us and sharing the fishing on Colorado fishing, the CKFC. We love the clubs. And then, of course, Shields, that whole piece. This is awesome stuff. And
awesome.
Keep me
Thanks
in,
for having
like
me
I said, keep me in mind out there. And if you need a bachelor party, man, you let us know. I'm sure James and I could put together something, man.
Right. A couple of my buddies don't fish. I've been fishing with them. There's one of my buddies who fish all the time, and the other one, I don't know.
I bet you we can come up with some kayaks. Don't worry. We'll get him in a kayak,
We can pile in, throw a case of beer. He'll be fine.
Exactly. All right, folks, listen, make sure to go out, give Shields some love. Shields Johnstown, check them out online. You can't miss them out there. If you're watching us through the YouTube channel, please smash that subscribe, like, and follow on all of our socials out there. That is a massive way. It doesn't cost you a dime, and it's a huge support for us out there with our sponsors and such. As always, folks, tight lines and be safe.
Kaleb Z.